Well, hello there, fellow geeks and geekettes, and welcome to yet another recommendation video for the times of self-distancing and self-isolation. And in one of my last videos, I told you that I was going to make a horror-themed recommendation video. And it is not going to be only a recommendation video. There are going to be several of them, because I love the horror genre so much that I couldn't just pick 5 or 10 things, or even 15, and talk about them in 15 minutes in a single video. So today I've picked 5 picks that I'm going to recommend to you, and the second part is probably going to be out tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So my first pick is very interesting and very specific in that it was first a novella written by a British author, and that same man then wrote a script for a film, and he directed the film, which then evolved into a movie franchise, into a series of films, which weren't that great, but the novella and the first film are fantastic. They're cult classics and one of my favorites, and I can rewatch the film and reread the novella hundreds of times, and I will not get bored by it. And I'm of course talking about the Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker and the Hellraiser film from the 1980s. So the Hellbound Heart was written by, as I said, the British author Clive Barker, one of the best horror, mystery, supernatural authors in the history of literature. And I'm sure that all horror fans know Hellraiser, or even better, the novella, The Hellbound Heart. But to summarize the plot very quickly, or really tell you the gist of the book, well, it all revolves around a puzzle box, which, if it gets solved properly, it will summon the so-called Cenobites, which are these demon-like characters from hell that will, well, take you to hell, where you, according to how you solve the puzzle, will experience tremendous suffering, but also tremendous pleasure. And in the majority of cases, in all cases actually, it's the tremendous suffering, which some people take pleasure out of. So it's really, it is a bit twisted for people who can't stomach horror-like things like that. I wouldn't recommend that, but you will know, the gist of the thing from just the simple covers of the Blu-rays here. This is, by the way, a collection of the first 3 films, which aren't that, the first one is of course fantastic, the second one and the third one are very good, but the rest, it's not even included in the collection. They're shit, so don't even watch them. From the covers themselves of the book, or not the book, the Blu-rays, you can see this is the first one. As this character, Pinhead, has become extremely popular, a horror cult classic icon, like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. This is the second one, and the third one, Hell on Earth. So you can see that it's a stylized into a horror / BDSM visual stylization, things like that. Even the premise itself, taking pleasure out of extreme suffering in hell, suggests that there are things like that are dealt with in the horror series. But as I said, if you have the chance, read the novella, watch at least the first film. If you watch the first 3 movies, you can't go wrong there. The rest, just forget about that. It's shit. But that is my first recommendation. Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, and Hellraiser by Clive Barker. Well, where do I put it? I'll put it back. My second recommendation is actually more of a comedy. It's The Army of Darkness. This is a Czech copy of a DVD. That's why it's written in Czech here. But it's actually the third part of a horror series by Sam Raimi. The first one, obviously, is Evil Dead. It's about a group of young people who go on a vacation to a cabin in the woods, and they find a strange old book bound in human skin. And there are some spells in it, and they read from the book and summon awful things from from the netherworld that torments them throughout the entire film and the second film. That might sound not that original, but it was done by Sam Raimi, who is very famous for combining horror and comedy elements. So I do not really consider the Evil Dead 2, and The Army of Darkness to be simple and pure horror films, but it's really a horror comedy. And my favorite horror comedy trilogy, in fact. And it's because of the specific style of how Sam Raimi does his films. And the third one is really, in addition to this, a fantasy film, because, I don't want to spoil it too much. At the end of the second film, the main character, Ash, with this guy with a chainsaw for his hand, he gets transported to the Middle Ages, where he fights the same or similar demons that he was fighting in his present time, in the cabin in the woods. But this time, the plot isn't just focused on that simple cabin in the woods and the woods around it, but to quite a vast area in medieval England. And to be honest, watching Evil Dead 2 and The Army of Darkness, you will laugh your ass off like throughout the entire trilogy. So that's why I'm recommending this. It is one of my favorite horror films, one of my favorite comedies, and not only it is fitting for horror fans, but also for fans of comedy, because as I said, it is a combination of the two genres, and these times, in our day and age, we have to forget the reality as much as possible, and laughter is very sparse. So that is why I have chosen mainly The Army of Darkness, because it is my favorite of the three, but I do recommend you watch Evil Dead 2, and The Army of Darkness. There was a remake of Evil Dead a couple of years ago. It's not that good, but the original one from 1980s, do watch it. I recommend it very, very much indeed. Right, so the next film I recommend is The Thing by John Carpenter. This is a very nice steelbook edition of the film. And that, of course, is, see here. And that's the inside. Well, it's not that interesting. It's just the disc here. And that's a really sci-fi horror film. I'm sure most of you know it, but it is about a group of scientists who are on an scientific expedition in, is it Antarctica or something like that? Well, in a frozen area of the world, and they find something buried under the. I'm making noise with the bag. I know, but it is a protective bag for Blu-rays, because I'm a maniac and a collector. And they find something buried underneath the ice that has been there for thousands of years. Well, and they find out that it is actually an alien that can take on any form of any like being, be it a man or an animal. But in order to do that, the alien has to come, or the thing has to come in contact with the thing that the alien is copying. And the alien, of course, devours the being that it copies. So that the alien kind of eats you, and then he transforms, its form into you. So the people around you won't really know that it's not you, that it's just a copy of you, that it's actually the thing, the alien, that will kill them and, shape its form again and again, or reshape its form again and again into, the other people. So when the thing, gets among, the closed group of scientists in the Antarctica, there are some troubles, and you can see where I'm heading. So this is a cult classic once again. There's Kurt Russell in the film. I love Kurt Russell. It was done, as I said, by John Carpenter. He even, I think, made the music to that film. He did that with most of his films. And what else can I say? It is an 80s flick. It's from 1982, and in my opinion, the best films, be it horror films, comedy films, action films, were made in 1980s. So that's my final pick for this part of my horror recommendations. And it was 5, yeah, right? Because I do consider the novella Clive Barker to be the first one. The movie interpretations of the novella is the second. And then you've got The Army of Darkness, but really the Evil Dead trilogy. And The Thing by John Carpenter. There was a prequel made to it. It wasn't that bad, but please just do watch the original one, that's enough. So if you like horror films, horror books, horror, anything horror comics, do check these things out, and you can be looking forward to another part of this series, which is going to come very, very soon. But it is all from me for today. Thank you for watching, and stay indoors.